28 countries, including Britain, France, and much of Europe, have come together to demand an end to the genocidal war on Gaza, marking a significant shift in tone from some of Israel's closest allies. And in a powerful joint statement, the foreign ministers condemned the drip feeding of aid and the inhumane killing of civilians, including children, seeking to meet their most basic needs of water and food. Israel's foreign ministry swiftly dismissed the statement as disconnected from reality, claiming it sends the wrong message to Hamas. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General sounded the alarm over Gaza's rapidly deteriorating conditions, warning that its last lifelines are collapsing and that the humanitarian crisis is accelerating by the day. With global outrage mounting and Gaza's suffering deepening, the world is left asking how long will Palestinians continue to suffer under relentless bombing where children are the main victims? And most urgently, when will this war finally end? And I'm Salma El Fiki, and welcome to In Depth. A group of 28 Western countries, including Australia, Canada, France, Italy, and the United Kingdom, declared on Monday that the war in Gaza must end now, stating that the suffering of civilians has reached new depths. And according to Le Monde, the signatories, which also included Japan, Switzerland, New Zealand, and several EU countries, said they were prepared to take further action to support an immediate ceasefire. The wide-ranging statement described the controversial Israeli-supported relief effort in Gaza as dangerous and said it deprived Gazans of their human dignity. While Israel criticized the statement, the group also called on the Israeli government to immediately lift restrictions on the flow of aid and to urgently enable the UN and the humanitarian NGOs to carry out their life-saving work safely and effectively. The newspaper added that the signatories strongly opposed any steps towards territorial or demographic changes in the occupied Palestinian territories, condemning an Israeli plan to move Palestinians into a so-called humanitarian city as unacceptable. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres recently condemned the rapidly deteriorating conditions in Gaza, warning that the last remaining lifelines keeping people alive are collapsing. And in a statement, Guterres said Israeli bombardments have intensified in recent days, while aid deliveries are being impeded, undermined, and endangered. He expressed deep concern over the growing reports of children and adults suffering from malnutrition. Adding to the growing international frustration expressed by the group of Western nations, the UN chief also condemned Israel's killing of civilians seeking humanitarian aid in Gaza over the weekend, calling it an atrocious and inhumane act. He demanded an immediate ceasefire along with the unimpeded aid access to the starving enclave. And according to the UN reports, about 87% of Gaza is now under evacuation orders or within Israeli military zones, leaving 2.1 million civilians squeezed into a fragmented 12% of the strip, where essential services have collapsed.
"28 countries, including Britain, France, Italy, Japan, and Australia, have issued a powerful joint statement demanding an immediate end to Israel's war on Gaza. The foreign ministers described the humanitarian situation as catastrophic, citing horrifying scenes of over 800 civilians, many of them children, shot while trying to access food. They condemned Israel's aid model, calling it dangerous and inhumane, saying it strips Gazans of their dignity and violates international law. The joint statement marks the sharpest shift yet from key Western allies, reflecting both political pressure and mounting frustration from Israel's actions. The statement also signals potential political consequences, saying they are prepared to take further action to support a ceasefire and political pathway to security and peace. But Israel swiftly rejected the criticism, calling it disconnected from reality. The United States also dismissed the condemnation, with Ambassador Mike Huckabee labeling it disgusting. On the ground, Gaza's lifeline is collapsing. Nearly 90% of population is displaced. Hundreds have died at 8 sites, overseen by Israel, and malnutrition is killing children. As international pressure intensifies and famine looms, ceasefire talks remain deadlocked. And for Palestinians, survival is now a daily battle.
And delving more into this, we are joined from Cairo by Mr. Mohammed Abdel Halim, the director of the Egyptian Enterprise for Policy and Studies Center, and from the occupied Jerusalem by Ms. Ratiba El Nacha, the member of the Palestinian National Action Committee. Welcome, and welcome to In Depth. Let me start with Mr. Mohammed. How do you view, sir, the recent move by the 28 Western countries jointly pressuring Israel to end the war in Gaza? Do you think this could signal a shift in international alliances or just a new diplomatic strategy in the Middle East?
Thank you for having me. This is humanitarian, and I thank Qnews for delivering my voice to the world and delivering, the voices of people in Gaza. Let me start that this latest statement is illegal condemned. It is very clear to what Israel did. It is a huge push to the Gaza Strip, to what's happening from violations by the Israeli occupation country. Western country statements, this will help in ending the war in the Strip, and it has to reflect on the international protocols and the Geneva agreements. It helps, form the diplomatic conscious. Yes, there will be a reformation, and there will be pressure on Israel to get to the deal, to the ceasefire deal. So maybe they will reach this. This pushes Gaza to them to stop.
Ms. Ratiba, the joint statement was issued amid ongoing reports of mass casualty incidents near the aid distribution sites and rising malnutrition levels that, according to the UNRWA, now affect roughly 10% of Gaza's children. Why do you think, in your opinion, Israel has intensified its attacks near the aid sites, where many of the victims are desperate civilians?
Actually, the main goal of these Israeli attacks, is to kill the Palestinian. It's not about any political goals. Or maybe it's for one political goal, to establish the greatest Israel, and this needs to destroy all the Palestinian or kill them. We remember that in this election of this government, Smotrich said that the Palestinians have 3 choices in front of this government: even to be killed, or to leave this land, or to be a servant for this country, means Israel. And then then we can see these strategies and action that this government took, not only in Gaza Strip, but also in West Bank, including Jerusalem, by transferring people, killing people, and destroying houses all over the Palestine. So what is happening in Gaza intensively means that they are intensively going for this goal, to destroy the Palestinian and kill the Palestinian. This is what genocide means. But it seems that till now, the international community, including even the UNRWA, is not putting the things in its real name, like saying that 10% of the people in Gaza is starving or in danger of being died of hunger because of hunger, and that's not true, because 100% of the people in Gaza is dying now in a daily pace because of lack of food and medicine. We have more than 900,000 child in Gaza in a danger of being
Actually,
died
Ms.
in
Ratiba,
hunger.
when you just mentioned children in particular, why do you think in particularly right now, is there some sort of plan? Why is it specifically now, I feel, targeted to children? Now, most of the victims are all children at the moment.
50% of the Palestinians are under 18 years old, which means that 50% of the population in Palestine is children.
Yes.
And they are targeting civilian people. So they are targeting the children as well. And this has happened from the beginning of this war and these attacks. It's not.
But aren't children more now at the moment?
But now the people lose all the means of living. They have no means of living. These orphan children, we are talking about 19,000 orphans in Gaza left without parents to serve them and find food for them. They are targeted because they are alone. They have no one to support them as children. This is a mascara, what is happening in Gaza. When we hear about young people that they are dying because of starvation, it's just because they have no means of living. They are left alone in Gaza Strip with no means of living. Even they are separated from their parents because the several times of transferring from one place to another place. These replacement from one place to another place several times separated many people from their families. Separated the families and especially the children from their parents. And they are left alone now, and they are easy to be targeted.
They're orphans, because of basically. That. Yes. Mr. Mohammed, in their statement, the foreign ministers acknowledged that the suffering of the civilians in Gaza has reached new depths. Why is the international humanitarian law seemingly unable to protect the civilians who continue to bear the brunt of Israeli bombardments and the collapse of basic services at the moment?
Unfortunately, the international will is not strong enough to end these international violations and the protocol, the Genevieve Protocol violation. So the public court, the international court, even they are now using starvation as a weapon. So this violation must be added to their, to what they did to the international law, and they failed to use the American veto to, face these violations and have it to the international court, what they did in Africa, what they did regarding this case. So it needs to be added to this case, actually. So all the philosophical aspects that made this government, if Israel continues doing this international system will be destroyed. But there is a slight hope after having this after the 28 countries talked and released statements. So we hope that these statements, and we hope that they will recognize Palestine as a sovereign state and stop these violations and apply the international humanitarian law. So yes, unfortunately, as I told you, we don't have the international will to stop this.
So Mr. Mohammed, do you believe that the foreign minister's statement will have an effect and will have Israel accountable and do some pressure, in your opinion?
Yes. And I also think that England, Boston, and France will have to pressure Israel further and stop, providing them with arms. And I think that they will focus on the pressure and uniting the European countries and having the Western situation regarding this. They will be so with the violation of the international law, this clearly and this transparently, especially with using the starvation lately and distributing humanitarian aid in an inhumane way. So Israel is using starvation, the arms of starvation, but unfortunately all their trials have failed, to say that they are sticking to the international law, and but Palestine has proved its resistance against this.
And Mr. Atiba, do you believe the statement issued by these European nations is sufficient to push forward Israel accountable for the consequences of this devastating war? Will there be some sort of an impact, do you think, after that statement?
We are waiting for the steps that will be taken after this statement. If there is a real steps that will be taken to stop Israel, then this statement will become a reality and maybe can make a push or a pressure on Israel. But it's just a statement. From 650 days till now, we hear a lot of statements of that make nothing and putting nothing and can't stop Israel from what it's doing, from killing the Palestinian, from seeking Gaza Strip and not entering the humanitarian aids. We need real action, not just statements. If they have a real will to change the reality, they have a lot of tools to do that by cutting, exporting weapons to Israel. This is the first step. Maybe reviewing the partnership agreement between Europe and Israel. This is the second step. And then if they have the will to make punishment against Israel and to isolate Israel in the international community, this is the steps that we need to stop Israel, not just a statement that have no legs on earth to work on stopping this genocide. Every minute, every second in the life of the Gazan people, it makes difference. And we are in a real battle with times, against the time, to struggle for living in Gaza Strip. So this statement will mean nothing, as well as other statements that comes from these European countries and the United Nations as well. Everyone is looking forward for the committee that will be held next week in New York from France and Saudi Arabia. If they have a real will, they will explore these meetings
take steps to do something.
Yeah, to take real steps against Israel to stop this genocide.
Yes. Mr. Mohammed, considering the systematic destruction of the hospitals, the bakeries, and water infrastructure, everything, what legal mechanisms do you think exist to hold Israel accountable for what the UN Secretary General has described as atrocious and an inhumane act, including the attacks on the civilians seeking aid and the obstruction of humanitarian deliveries?
The article number 7 of the International Court, it describes the attack as infrastructure attacking the infrastructure in during war is a clear violation of this article, the 7th article, and so they will have to present this to the International Court. There is more than one crime happening. There's starvation, dislocation of the people, but regarding the infrastructure, this is a clear violation of Article 7 of the internal law of the International Court. And so I think that moving now is pushing the case further regarding the case that South Africa had. There are statements and there are files, international files. They are very strong, but if they have to get back to the United Nations, they have to talk about what's happening, the humanitarian catastrophe that's happening in Gaza. We will be surprised by the American veto, even though we are trying to have the Security Council's statement, and we are waiting for it. We were waiting for him to condemn Israel and what it is doing, and its clear violations. And so we need everyone to stick to to so we need them to stick to what happened. And so these are all the legal actions that we can refer to hold Israel accountable, and if there is an international will as well to keep the humanitarian case.
Ms. Ratiba, despite the mounting evidence of indiscriminate violence, why do you think have the key Western powers still continue to shield Israel from diplomatic consequences such as sanctions or arms embargoes so far? Why do you think this has been happening?
I think there's two main reasons. One, that they feel guilty about what happens to the Jewish in the Second War and the Holocaust. And they want to protect the Jewish and to make them like a special case in every action. And these protections turn to be a tool of killing the Palestinian and making a new genocide against the Palestinian in this time. And the second thing that I think that the Israeli lobby or the Zionist lobby is very strong in Europe, and still it has a real power and control on the governments in these countries, and it controls the money. And as you know, the money talks in these countries. So they are under the will of the Zionist lobby till now, and they have no real will to fight against the Israeli lobby. As we witness and see through the few days ago in the United States, that even the White House and Trump has no real word to say against the will of Netanyahu and the IPAC, the Israeli lobby in the United States. I think that these countries are occupied by the Zionist lobby, by their minded and the money of this lobby, and I think other things more and more that make them under the will of this Zionist lobby in Europe
Israel.
and in the United States. Yes.
Mr. Mohammed, how has the recent intensification of the Israeli airstrikes further deepened the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, particularly for the vulnerable groups such as the children or the malnourished?
This actually reflected lately on what the countries are doing, and have the international conference to recognize Palestine as a sovereign state. And so it was led by France, and I think that this conference will be revived to recognize Palestine as a state and to protect Palestine. But unfortunately, there is things that happening in Israel, and facing what Israel is doing there to the humans, the humanitarian violations, and what's happening lately. This actually shows that, but the countries have to condemn these violations, and we need to move together to stop all these violations and keep the international humanitarian system. And we need to stick and have the countries that condemned Israel and apply the humanitarian aspect that we have had for centuries. And using starvation and malnutrition, Israel has has been using them, and this is just a huge violation of the rules. We are taking back to the medieval centuries. We are living in a world without an international law protecting humans.
Yeah, Ms. Ratiba, despite the growing international frustration, a ceasefire still remains elusive. What do you think are the prospects for reaching a ceasefire soon? Do you think that's possible, considering the deeply entrenched issues between Israel and Hamas that continue always to a deadlock in negotiations?
I think it's the will of Netanyahu. Just if Netanyahu wants to have a ceasefire, it will be this deal will done.
Okay.
Because the only obstacles against this deal since January 25 till now is just Netanyahu says, nothing else. No real obstacles.
Okay.
He is putting obstacles against this agreement by putting logic maps of occupying Gaza and want the Palestinian to agree on occupying Gaza forever. And this is not what the Palestinians really want. They want to end the war, and they want to put conditions for ending this war, not just a ceasefire for 60 days and returning for the operations, the military operations again. So without a real will of ending this war from the Israeli side, this agreement will not be reached. And I think that Israel have no will till now to end the war and the military operation in Gaza Strip, although even the military association in Israel have no real goals to go for it, and they see that there is no means of this operation since a year ago, not just these days, but still the political will in Israel want more and more Palestinian blood. And this means that they don't want to end this war, and they are not going for a ceasefire for 60 days. And even if they go for an agreement in any kind of a pressure, it will not succeed to continue 60 days unless we have a real condition to end this war and to have an agreement and conditions that let this war end once and forever.
Mr. Mohammed, do you think the growing international pressure holds any real influence over the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, especially compared to the pressure from the US President Donald Trump?
I think that the pressure, this is positive, but with the open support from Donald Trump to Netanyahu, this actually hasn't been fruitful, but Netanyahu has an agenda, and he is going to escape the charges against him. And as long as there is a support from Washington to Netanyahu, these violations will keep on happening. And furthermore, Netanyahu is currently looking for countries to welcome displaced people from the Gaza Strip, and he's using, mass displacement, and he is going on with this. He will keep doing this as long as Washington still supports them. And we had statements from 20 European countries, and the Arab countries have to use this as a tool to pressure Israel to stop these violations. We hope that Washington will stop supporting Israel very soon for these, genocides and these clear violations and loud violations of the humanitarian law.
Ms. Ratiba, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt recently stated that President Trump has not liked seeing reports from the recent days of Palestinians killed while trying to access the humanitarian aid, and wants to end the killing. However, with no breakthrough yet achieved in Gaza negotiations, do you think Trump has lost hope in Netanyahu, or is he simply unable to persuade him to end the 20-month-long war? And I have almost 30 seconds, if you can answer the question.
It's just simple. Yes, he hasn't any influence or power against Netanyahu to put pressure on him to cease fire or to end this war. And he is disappointed from unobeying his orders and his words from Benjamin Netanyahu several times. And the show that Benjamin Netanyahu is trying always to show to everyone that the White House and Trump has no power on Israel, and they can't control the Israeli decisions.
Well, that was Ms. Ratiba El Nacha, the member of the Palestinian National Action Committee, and Mr. Mohammed Abdel Halim, the director of the Egyptian Enterprise for Policy and Studies Center. Thank you so much for joining us today. And that concludes today's episode of In Depth. And thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.